Hi everyone, Patricia Worby, Alchemy Therapies here, and delighted to be with you today and introduce you to my friend and colleague, Rebecca Dinsdale, who's coming to us all the way from the lovely northeast of England, and describes herself as an author, speaker, and coach to encourage your life joy. And I know, Rebecca, that your book, Lifejoy, came out quite recently, and I think you've got another one very shortly out, or it's on the drawing board, something like that. And what a wonderful message, isn't it, in these difficult times to understand that life can be more hopeful. And I wonder, how did you get into, coming up with this idea of how you wanted to put this across?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be with you. Well, I meandered my way there really through tremendous adversity and having to learn really what joy meant in a restricted life. And I felt that through all the illness we had endured as a family, if I were to improve, there had to be something of loving purpose from it. So really, I got to the point at the end of my studies, which were very long and protracted, as well as joyous and lovely, looking to see what I could do. And there was actually very little that I could do because I was physically so unwell, and I'd had severe ME for much of 20 years after viral onset glandular fever and, classically pushing, as a lot of people with ME do, trying to get well, making themselves much worse, housebound, bedbound. So really, I'd come to the end of a degree, a master's and a doctorate with lots of interruptions in between. Okay. And I thought, I did think, my goodness, what can I do? And I sat in our front room chair and I made a list of the things that were possible. And somehow that became the essence of Lifejoy.
Beautiful.
And it was about what can we do to make it better? What can I offer? And how can that be of use to somebody else? And I had 2 or 3 miracles really happen through all of those years of difficulty. Was that academia taught me to present and to write and to research, and I loved that. And then the university asked me to give motivating talks to their new postgrads. And they asked me to speak about what it was like to be a postgraduate. So all the other people they asked in the conference talked about their research, their director of studies, their laboratories. And what it appeared to me was that I could talk to them about my academic pursuits, or I could help them cope and to keep going through the difficulties of what is a very intangible life as a postgrad.
Yeah.
So I wrote a talk, and I started off and I said, you're young, you're fit, you're clever, you've got everything. And suddenly all these beautiful, 20-somethings looked up like, oh, and they had forgotten that. Mm-hmm. So I did them the talk, Gratitude, Organization and Determined Discipline, and helped them keep going when studying is difficult and frustrating and lonely and expensive.
All of those things, yeah.
And a privilege as well. So it was how you marry those things together. So that talk really was the essence of what I could offer, that I could hopefully write, speak, and do something to help people to help themselves.
Absolutely. And it's such an unusual thing, isn't it? Because you see a lot in academic circles, people talking about the nature of the research and the writing and the sort of more structural elements of study, but what I would call the spiritual or the motivational aspect is very often ignored completely. And not just in people who are, at university, but generally in life. I think we're missing that angle of what motivates people shouldn't be pushing through. It shouldn't be I ought to, and I should get this done, and I've got so much pressure to do this stuff. It feels like a lot of us are under this chronic stress kind of response of what we should be and who we should be. And what you're talking to there is a loosening of that, a freeing up of that, and seeing the bigger picture, perhaps, of who they really are, you know, to tell people they're beautiful, they're precious. You know, this is such an important message that people don't know. They don't hear it, because all they hear is, you've got to do this, you've got to get better than this person, you've got to get this grade, and it never ends, does it? It starts in school and it just carries on throughout life. So what a wonderful message.
Well, and I think you're so right in that, because what I noticed was I had all physical functioning stripped from me, essentially. So all the external labels that we measure ourselves by were useless, because when the only thing you can manage to do is feed yourself and go to the shower in the day, and the rest of the time you're really quite physically tortured, you have to realize that being brave, loyal, good-tempered, determined, they're the things that are eternal, not whether you got 3 A's. And I spent a lifetime trying to get good grades and be, you know, a good daughter and a good girl, and behave well and work hard. And what it really taught me was when I had friends who were very sick and felt utterly ruined and worthless, because that's what severe protracted illness does. It just strips you of your ability to do lovely, lovely normal life, is that they were very precious, whatever their ability to function.
Beautiful.
And when I was doing 1/6 time of that first degree, which was a complete joke to everybody, people used to say, oh, how old will you be, Becca? By the time you finish, you'll be 42 or something. And that's not an easy message when you're 19 and you can hardly stand up.
True.
But 1/6 was precious. And I managed to get to 1/3. And by the time I was doing 1/3 time, I felt like I'd won the pools. You know, I was just like, hey, this is success.
Beautiful.
But suddenly, the great message is the tortoise and the hare. And I had wonderful parents, and I was very well supported. You know, my dad would take me to a lecture. He'd stay outside in case I wasn't well enough to last the lecture. And people would ask me, where's your dad, Beck? It was so lovely.
Wow.
And my mum would, you know, she would park her car outside so that if I needed to come out early from somewhere, you know, it would be there. There were nuances of great sensitive care that enabled so much. But suddenly, when I got to 2/3 time, so I'm still having about 20, 30 weeks a year in bed or housebound, but it wasn't pointless, the 1/6. And that was a very difficult thing to believe when all your lecturers said, oh, you're so poorly, you know, would you not be better off going home and, you know, doing some Tai Chi or being a parent governor or not bothering? And there was just this little essence of that 1/6 that was utterly joyous. You know, I had nice friends. My lecturers were kind. And I was just a student in there. I wasn't somebody who was ill. I wasn't somebody who couldn't walk very far. I wasn't somebody who always got infections, all those nuisances of illness. I was just Becca who did her essays, you know. And I had such joy during those lectures. So I suddenly realized that I had to redefine what was important, because I couldn't keep up in any way. So everybody was lapping me, everybody was finishing before me, everybody was getting married before me, everybody was having children, everybody was going on holidays, and I just wasn't in the well world to compete with that. But if I could do my 1/3 time, there was value in that.
Beautiful. It just so describes where a lot of people end up. And what I think what COVID has given us is the idea of, you know, lockdown has really taught people what it feels like to be isolated from the world, doesn't it? And so there's a greater appreciation, I think, now of the ways that people have been left to exist in isolation with chronic illness. Particularly where you look at some of the dialogue around that and how it's regarded as a weakness. As you said, you feel worthless, you know, but you managed to find the gratitude, the what did you call it? The joyous 1/6. That's so beautiful.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the secret for a lot of people, is to find the space within them that isn't in pain, that isn't suffering, you know, even if it's only a 1/6 or a 1/10 or a 1% of where they are, that actually says, I'm okay here right now in this space or in this activity, whatever it is. Because as you know, our brains tend to focus on the negative much more easily than they do on the positive. And I think what you're tapping into is this ability of the brain to actually enlarge the joy, to kind of build on that and build on that, because you recovered from something really very debilitating, which took away, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, it took away a large part of your youth, didn't it? It sort of stripped you of that. And here you are looking fabulous and having such purpose and wanting to spread that around to other people. So dare I say it's been a gift, or is that really insulting?
It's a wonderful question, and it's a clever one, and it's a brave question. I would caveat 2 or 3 things. I think wherever you are in life, there are always 1,000 people who would swap with you. I always think that. And I used to look around on the hardest of days. Mm-hmm. And I used to think, well, you know, I've got loving parents, I've got a safe home, I've got 7 pillows, you know, there were tiny things that kept me sane. Yeah. But that is easy to do when you have loving support. Yeah. And you're not worried about the gas bill. I'm very aware of that. And I was often very sick through the night for a lot of nights. So one of the great revelations in our life was my dad was up with me once, and he was very often very unwell. And he just said, let's just put the heat on. It's just too cold at 4 a.m. not to have the heat on. Mm-hmm. And the revelation that we could do that. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that, because there were so many people who couldn't. And difficulty is compounded by difficult circumstances, especially when you're alone and you're short of resources. So I was always aware of that. I was also aware that I try and think of everything as a lesson. And if I'm brave enough, it's a blessing. You know, and I get there in the end. But I think that does take time. And I think sometimes life can be so brutal and so unfair and so random that to be Pollyanna-ish, that everything will be all right and you'll be fine and you can have whatever you want in life and, you know, just go for it. And I think, well, there are just some common sense realities of sometimes how demanding it can be, but also that we perhaps are more capable than we believe. And when I did manage to get to go to work, a lot of my work, both speaking and coaching, was helping people believe that they were contented, capable, and that they would manage.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you definitely are touching on something really important there. The nature of support is such a big determinant, really, of how people cope in these situations. All right. So, yeah, I deliberately provoked you by saying, is it a gift? You know, because you often hear that in the sort of wellness community, in that sort of law of attraction sort of idea that the difficult things in life aren't an accident in a way. They're actually brought to you by the energy that you're emanating subconsciously and so on. And that the way forward is to kind of see the beauty and the spiritual quality of wherever you are. And I know when I say to people, you know, eventually you will look upon this as a gift, and their eyes narrow. They're like, well, how can I get through this horrendous time? Support is one of the biggest factors that enables people to break free of the cycle of anxiety over health and the kind of downregulation of the nervous system that goes along with that when you're in fear. All right. And I always talk about the challenge and support seesaw, because I think it's a great sort of analogy to think of. So trauma tends to be high challenge and low support. All right. Whereas if you've got good support, you still have the trauma, but it doesn't feel as bad, and you can actually get through a lot easier, or in some ways. And if you've got high support and no challenge, you actually get quite dull. You do. And so people's lives are not challenging enough. So we want that nice level playing field, you know, where the two are in balance. And it sounds like with your mum and dad, you know, they really helped you to get through those darkest moments. And not everybody has that. We have to be honest, they don't. And there are some people out there struggling to pay the bills. And But I guess we both met through the Chrysalis Effect, didn't we? And we know that's one of the most profound support structures that I certainly encountered, you know, because the people going through that all have a great concern for each other, and they're also enabled to take part in things and get connected with each other, and connection is just so vital when you're recovering. So it's a marvelous story and inspiring for people to hear that. And I know that you've kind of even accelerated that recently beyond just doing the talking, you know, to students and so on. And now you've produced these amazing kind of tools and resources for people, haven't you? Do you want to tell me a little bit about what you're doing currently?
Well, you're very kind to me, thank you. At the end of my doctorate, I mean, I was unemployable and had been told that multiple times. And the 1-6 principle always stayed within me, because by the end of the first degree, I had done well and actually won a prize. End of the second degree, I'd come top, and I got a doctorate, which is, I have to say, like trying to pin jelly to the wall, isn't it? As you know, Dr. Worby.
It's hard. It's hard.
And I thought, well, there's some worth in that. So I was going to call my work Hope Joy, Lifejoy. You know, I had all kinds of permutations, but I thought, well, maybe I can do some talks, maybe I can have some coaching, and maybe I can do some services, because I was already doing a lot of church services just on a Sunday night covering for people.
Okay.
And I meandered most of the last decade into being a Christian celebrant. And the thing I did most of, I did about 10% talks, 10% clients, but then I did funerals. So I've spent the last decade looking after people, I hope, on their worst eras of life with loving care, because I did understand what difficulty was in a way that is quite rare. Because if you were to ask me about the most difficult things I've encountered, it has not been the challenges to my health. Because even though I've had a lot of illness, every day it's chased me 29 years, is that my mum had early onset dementia in her 50s, which was beyond horrific. And I would do anything, I would swap with her, because that was a level of a tortured soul that is difficult to articulate.
Sure.
And having endured that from a vibrant, capable, loving woman, I understood when I was looking after clients, many of whom parents had a similar situation, but nearly always there was a bridge, because I understood what it was to worry about bank holidays and emergency doctor covers. I understood what it was to protect somebody who couldn't swallow anymore. I understood what it was to deal with somebody with very extreme problems on every front, and look after somebody who was at the end of life and bedridden for years. So the level of that enormous difficulty, and still retain essentially who we are and still be hopeful and not embittered, was my great challenge. I thought, how can we use this and try and view it as a gift for other people, if it's not, even though it's not been a gift for us, because that level of hurt is very difficult to process. But ultimately, what I learned from doing all those funeral services were 3 great lessons. Just how much people love each other, just how brave people can be, and how resourceful they can be. And you become so connected to families when you're looking after them in that way, that they know all your business, you know all their business, and somehow you become something stronger as a result. So I had a loving working life. It was very frightening at times, it was very tragic, but it was also, look at my magnificent loved one, and I was the conduit to do that for them. So that was a profound era after so much illness, and trying to negotiate it while still not very well. So that was a balance. So when lockdown came, obviously the shielding issue came, so I couldn't do that anymore, which was quite heartbreaking, because I loved my clients so much, and I loved, a kind funeral director is such a gift to a family who's suffering. And where all of that took me to was that I actually took my mum's funeral.
Wow.
And that is not something I would ever wish on anybody to do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially when she,
yeah.
No, it was easier to take her funeral than it was to see her tortured, though.
Okay.
And that's a difficult judgment, because you want her, and you want her well and lovely and happy, and all her friends are at work and they're all going away and doing normal things, and she's in that bed. So that took me to the point where I couldn't do services anymore, but I was able to look after her, and I hope my clients, as well as it could be done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that people came out of funerals not transformed, but their healing had started. That's how I hoped it was.
Okay.
So then suddenly, a lifetime of trying to build this, I had to shield. So I thought, well, we'll come full circle. What can I do? So I wrote another book, which is Your Lifejoy Year, an enriching thought for every day, to just help people through, because I knew this was going to be difficult. And then I now have online courses to help people find their joy, their resilience, their fortitude, their confidence. And also I have coaching clients. So that's a long answer, sorry, but that's how I got there.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I hadn't realized how much lockdown had been kind of instigating that. It's interesting. Obviously I met you, I think it must be 3-4 years ago, and you were still a celebrant then. And I remember thinking, by the way, I have to say, you're one of the most joyous and funny. I always thought you have such an incredible sense of humor, and you bring joy to everything you do, which is extraordinary. And it must have been extraordinary for the people that asked you to take the service. So, but doing that for your own mother, and I do want to say, my mother's going through this at the moment, and it's awful and very hard to witness. I totally get that. But to show people that there is a resource in them that is all about connection to perhaps a higher goodness. I don't know how you would describe that. I know that obviously you have a belief in God and that sense of purpose. And many people, actually enjoy that feeling of connection to something bigger than themselves. And I think that's what you engender. If I was to summarize that, you help people connect to something bigger than just the individual going through their individual situation. And so I did joke actually before we came on air that you kind of remind me a little bit of Oprah Winfrey, because you have these Lifejoy you have these Lifejoy Sundays, don't you, where you kind of send out the link and you come online and you have a chat with someone, and it's just a marvelous way of connecting people. I mean, who would have thought a year or so ago that we'd all be doing this kind of differently? Because it's thrown everything up in the air, hasn't it? Everything we thought we'd do. But yeah, I love what you've done with your own personal experience. You've not let it limit you completely. You've allowed it to teach you stuff and to help you grow into something better. I don't know if that's the right term, but something bigger than simply yourself. And you're giving the gift of, as you say, worthiness, love, bravery, fortitude, all of those things through what you do. And it is a marvelous gift to everyone, regardless of circumstance. We particularly in the health and well-being arena, we look at helping people to recover their health. But I mean, everybody has a spiritual crisis at times in their life. They have losses, they have difficulties. And so this message of hope is such an important one. And I think that's what I love about what you do and who you are. And so I just wanted to finish up really by saying, is there anything you would kind of want to say to people going through difficult times right now, with isolation or worries and fears around recovery or getting out of this situation that we're currently in?
Well, I think the most important thing to say is that people, particularly who've got COVID or had it, to please just go gently. You do not want to push. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean you're being lazy or not trying. You don't want long COVID, and you don't want ME, and you don't want severe ME. So I always caution people, any kind of virus, a bacterial, any kind of infection, please just go gently. And sometimes I nag people, I'm ringing up saying, please rest, please be careful. because I do know about what pushing can generate. And of course, you've got to push a little bit, but do not kill yourself and ruin your health. And that message is so countercultural, but that I haven't met anybody with ME who hasn't thought in those early weeks, I wish I'd just gone a bit more gently, because we could have prevented potentially a lot, or unstressed a system. But I think I always find that if you can count your blessings and be the blessing, if you can try and find some resourcefulness around you or within you, but also I've seen people terribly cluttered in life, and that I don't say these things glibly, because, I talk about, I have improved health, thankfully, but I had a great deal to facilitate it. And I also think there are an awful lot of people who have such abundant, lovely, normal lives, the wealth of normality. Please see it and please cherish it while you've got it, because it'll store you up for the adversity, because, life can be bumpy. And if it isn't bumpy, you're doing very well. And when people were upset they'd missed a holiday, which I understand, to put some perspective, I always think perspective and proportion help. Is the last holiday my dad went on was in 1989. Wow. That's what illness has done. I've never been on a plane. I've never been drunk. I always tell my friends I've never had a kebab. That's like the biggest loss in my life, that I haven't eaten a kebab.
You poor thing.
And, exactly. And I haven't had any children, and I have had to live very cautiously. But yet my 1/6 element was what I could do with what I had. So I'm not a big paragon of virtue. I'm not a big inspiration. I have just had loving support and success, and feel very fortunate because I've had that loving care.
Yeah. Well, great words there. We're seeing more and more, problems coming in where people try and push themselves through a situation where their body is crying out for rest. And, we coach people, both of us coach people to kind of hold back a little and kind of work with their bodies, rather than this mental idea that we've somehow got to get back to work or back to normality, when the body is saying, I don't even know what's happening now, and I need you to listen. And so it's the pushing through, I think, and the kind of belief systems that surround that I'm only worthwhile while I'm working, or while I'm, earning the money or producing stuff or helping somebody or whatever. And actually to spend time with yourself in deep kind of connection with your body is really tough. It was really tough for me, because I no way did I want to be in bed at 34 looking at the ceiling thinking that my life was over. I wanted real life, normal life, to just get fixed and come back. But what I learned from that experience was that my belief systems had kind of brought that to me because of my pushing through. And a lot of the people we're seeing now getting, unfortunately, sick, is that they're the kinds of people that kind of think that way, that have that mentality that they can only be worthwhile if they are busy, this busyness culture. So we're not, I know you're not, you're very careful, and I am too, to say that you just have to give in and give up. No, you do have to work a little and gradually improve, your exercise and your diet and your emotional health, of course. But it's a very gentle progression, and that's where the body needs you to go, so that you kind of assimilate each stage. And I think that's what a lot of people, they want the quick fix, they want the pill or the answer, whatever it is, to fix them. And actually it's a dual role here of you and your body working together in harmony to kind of overcome the whole, panoply of symptoms, which are generally mind and body working together. So it's a marvelous story. It's very inspiring. I'm going to use that phrase, the joyous sixth. In fact, I want to tag it. I think I will. If people want to get hold of you, Rebecca, how would they do that?
Oh, thank you. Well, come and join us. We have an email newsletter every week, and that's on my website, which is www.drrebecca.org.uk. And there's some lovely free giveaways there too. But we have a Facebook group and it is vibrant, it's joyous, and we call ourselves the Lifejoyers. And there's a lot of support and interaction there. And there's more than 300 of us. So it's growing.
And growing.
It is. And also the to just be part of something that is about, I call it the sanctuary for good souls, because there's so many people trying so hard in this world to just make us a bit braver, a bit wiser, a bit kinder. That to be amongst all of that is a lovely, lovely thing.
Kindness, I think, is underrated. I do. I've seen a lot of the opposite recently. A lot of judgment, a lot of shame, a lot of people judging each other, pitting, you know, their views against another person's views and so on. And kindness and celebration are, you know, despite differences, we can have differences and still love each other, you know?
Yes, yes.
So that's marvelous. Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me today. And it's been, as always, brilliant, as always. So, and I will post links beneath in the description for anyone who wants to get hold of either myself or Rebecca. And good luck with everything you're doing. It's just such brave, amazing work. So, and well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friends. Thank you.
Bye.